This everybody. Good morning. One of the pleasures of being subject to the Open Meeting Act is we all get together and you get to listen to us tell you we're going into executive session and we're going to be back. So I'm going to entertain that motion in a minute, but just a little bit on the logistics. I'm guessing that we'll be in executive session for an hour to an hour and a half. If there's any change in that schedule, Chris or someone will come in and keep you posted on the timing, so you hopefully won't have to cool your heels a long period of time. So with that, I would entertain a motion that this Board of Regents go into executive session.
I move the board enter into executive session for the purposes of discussing athletics conference membership as listed on today's meeting agenda.
Is there a second? Is there any other discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We'll see you in a bit. We're about ready to start. Is everybody in that wants to be in? So, Ms. Purcell, I understand that we need a motion to come out of executive session and into open session?
Yes.
Is there such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to exit executive session.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I'd like to make just a couple of remarks, and then I'm going to ask President Harris and our athletic director for comments before we consider the item of business for which we're all here. And I'm not going to go through a lot of detail because everybody is fully aware of the matters that have transpired over the last week or so. Yesterday, the Southeastern Conference did extend to the University of Oklahoma and the University of Texas a formal invitation for us to join their conference, and our Board of Regents will consider that invitation in a few moments. The reality is, and as we've all seen it over the years, that as athletic programs thrive, university programs thrive. And in this changing world of collegiate athletics that you all are acutely aware of, I'm really happy that the University of Oklahoma, the President's office, the Athletic Department's office, the Legal Counsel's office, everybody has been really tuned in to the dynamics of this environment and have done an outstanding job of keeping this university apprised of current situations. Before we consider the vote on this, I've asked President Harris to make some comments. Where's Joe? Joe, get up here, please. We need the A-team up front. Oh, you can't get by me. I got it. So, Joe, if you wouldn't mind, lead us off, and then we'll just go on to Joe C.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair Cawley, and to the rest of the board members for convening a special meeting to deal with the matter of OU's future athletic conference membership. In the 130-year history of the University of Oklahoma athletics, this is a significant decision. And this is a matter of true importance, not just for athletics, but for the broader university. And I'm thankful for the opportunity to offer context as to why we're making this recommendation. But before I do, I think it's important that we talk about a couple of things from a personal perspective. I have the utmost respect for my colleagues and counterparts in the Big 12. They are quite simply remarkable people. I hold each of them in the highest regard, and I sincerely value the opportunity I have to work with them and work alongside them. They become friends, they become mentors, and I've learned something from each of them. I want to thank Commissioner Bowlesby as well. In particular, I want to recognize our colleagues at Oklahoma State University. Together, we have a long-standing partnership in service to the state and to the citizens of our state. Vern Targus did an exceptional job, and they've made a wise decision, and it's now under the excellent leadership of Dr. Casey Schrum. I recognize that what brings us together today is inherently difficult. It's difficult to talk about and to do. And I want my colleagues to know that we did not embark on this lightly. It's hopefully a very thoughtful and reasoned approach. Now, as we look at this, context matters. As we think about what led us to this moment, it's important to take a step back and take a look at the Big 12 Conference. I know many of you know this, but we'll try and go through a few of these just so we're all on the same footing. So back in 1994-95, the Big 12 Conference was formed. I actually had just begun working at the University of Oklahoma then and was lucky to be a part of that. And as you move forward in the history of the Big 12 and you move forward to 2010, two important things happened that year in order. First, we had the media rights agreement, which we'll talk more about in a minute. That took place. After that took place, in 2010, the first conference restructuring took place. Nebraska and Colorado left the Big 12 Conference that year, reducing it from 12 to 10. 2 years later, in 2012, Texas A&M and Missouri also depart, dropping the number of members in the Big 12 to 8. There were two added, as we all know. That's West Virginia and Texas Christian, TCU. Now remember, the current media rights agreement that we're talking about, that expires in 2025, was put in place before those four left and before the two we discussed were added. In 2012, after those departures, OU took time and thought about whether or not we should make a conference change at that time. And there was much discussion and much activity around that in the media. In the end, we decided to stay at that time in 2012 in the Big 12 Conference. So the question is, what's changed? What's changed between 2012 and today? And the answer is everything. And I want to walk through that to make sure that's fully explained. When you look at the collegiate athletics landscape, let's go to 2012. In 2012, as you look forward to today, there are four distinct time frames that I think are important for us to think about as we get to this recommendation that we're making today. The first time frame would be 2012 to 2016. During that time period, everything seemed terrific, and it was. During that time period, as compared to every other broadcast out there, live sports were doing better. Because during that time, we saw the emergence of the first DVRs, called TiVo for some of us who were back then. Right? During that time period, every conference was doing better. Every conference was prospering during this time period because as compared to all other available content, live sports, people didn't record it and then just rush through the commercials. So the value of all of those contracts continued to go up during that time period, and everyone won. Now, the next time period, the second of these four, is the time period 2016 to 2018. And during that time period, things begin to change. We see for the first time the emergence of name, image, and likeness. That comes on to the scene. We see the rise of antitrust lawsuits, right? And this challenge to whether or not the NCAA could limit the amount that goes to a student through initially scholarships, and then it rose to cost of attendance, and then what came into question was, do you layer on top of that the idea of all education-related expenses, and what could those be? We also saw, importantly, the changing media landscape, which there are better experts in here than me. And the media landscape began to change because cord cutting, as they call it, began to take place. Live streaming became a factor. The third time period is 2008 until May of this year. During that time period, it became clear that the Big 12 was the last in line for media negotiations, not just as among all of the Power Five conferences, the Autonomous Five, but among all of those with the major broadcasters in live sports, be it the NFL, NHL, all of those. And being last in line has consequences. And the reality is, in college athletics, a big issue, there's a lot of conversation about money, but there are also other critical factors. A big factor is which time slots are filled by those that negotiate before you. You've heard conversations about Athletic Director Castiglione talking about not enjoying 11 a.m. kickoffs. Our fans talk about that. It also matters to student athletes. And when those go before you in terms of negotiations for 2025 and beyond, if those slots are already taken up, if the premier slots are already taken up, it impacts things in a material way. And it translates to disadvantages in recruiting the top talent, disadvantages for our student athletes, and a detriment to the fan experience. That's during this time period. During this time period, also the Big 12 network went to a fully online status, which is not a large a venue in this present climate. We also saw name, image, and likeness legislation not just starting but moving forward in Congress, moving forward among the states, and also discussions about how name, image, and likeness is handled at the NCAA level. Further, during the same time period, we see antitrust cases decided in the lower courts against the NCAA, against its ability to regulate the way it always has over that 115-year history of that organization. What we see is the importance of conferences growing because of these changes and the ability of the NCAA to continue to regulate the way they have called into fundamental question. And then there is the COVID impact. Right? The impact to institutions that are large capacity, that get filled by their fans, is much greater than those with smaller attendance and those that don't sell out their stadiums. So a much larger negative impact on institutions like the University of Oklahoma. All right, we talked about that time period being 2018 through May of 2021. The next key time period, which deserves its own, this month deserves its own spot on listing those four. And that is what took place in June of this year. It was seismic, right? The gathering storms over that time period that we laid out finally burst. They finally burst. And what did we see? Well, we saw in the media an awareness that there wasn't an interest in negotiating early for the Big 12. We also saw, and this is absolutely tectonic, we see the United States Supreme Court in a 9-0 decision, a unanimous United States Supreme Court decision comes down in June that finds against the NCAA on the specifics of the case out of the Ninth Circuit, but also calling into question through the antitrust laws the future of the NCAA being able to regulate the way it has. And we need look no further than the comments of the head of the NCAA, Mark Emmert, on this topic, and what an absolutely fundamental change this is. We also see Congress that had hearings over the NIL, name, image, and likeness, not take specific action. And so it was left to the individual states to make a decision on whether or not there would be name, image, and likeness availability within those states. We saw the NCAA's action finally come down on name, image, and likeness, which essentially left it to the states, which is a real patchwork that exists right now across the country and not existent in many states at all. So what does all of this tell us? What this tells us is the importance of the conference you're in, and it being the one that best fits the institution's abilities and needs in this uncertain landscape are greater than ever. So what's changed since 2012? Everything. Everything's changed. And so as we look at it, we look out, and unlike in 2012, where the question was, is there an opportunity here for us? that we could select, the idea of being opportunistic. That was the question in 2012. The question today is potentially existential. And so we sat back and we asked what's important to the University of Oklahoma. And what is of absolute critical importance to OU is that we fulfill our strategic plan. We developed a strategic plan that lays out who we are as an institution. And it's very specific, but it all ties up to one thing, which is we change lives. And the role of athletics plays a critical role in the life of a university. It is additive well beyond the playing fields. It is additive to the experiences that the students have, to the attachment they feel, to the desire to come, the desire to stay, and the ability to feel attached. Right? It is consequential across the institution. And we look at our aspirations in there, across the board, across our 5 pillars. Right? The goal that we will achieve of becoming an AAU caliber institution, all of these things tie and involve athletics. So as we monitor the landscape, we had the services of the best athletic director in the country. And if you don't believe that, ask him or check his Twitter feed. And we stepped back and we asked the question, what is it that matters to us? Right? How do we fulfill our goals and our dreams as an institution? And how does that relate to intercollegiate athletics? And we broke it down into 4 pieces, right? 2 groupings of 2. We asked ourselves at the beginning and end of the day, what are the 2 things that are absolute imperatives for our intercollegiate athletic programs? And there's 2 of them. The first is that we remain a premier national caliber athletics program and have to be able to see as we look with visibility towards the future, even when it's not crystal clear. We have to ask the question, are we putting ourselves on a path to be worthy of the legacy we have and to advance it over time? That's one. The second key imperative is equally essential and speaks to our larger goals. And that is we are fortunate to be among a very small handful of universities across the country where our athletics budget is not subsidized by student tuition and fee and is not subsidized by the state. And we look at those things that are absolutely critical to us because it impacts so much. Those are the 2 things that we have to make sure we're doing everything we can in our duties, in these roles while we have them, to advance those for today and tomorrow. Now, what are the preferred priorities we have? Just underneath that. Not the musts, but what are those 2 things we care a lot about? And there's 2 of those, right? The first is that we prefer to be in the same athletic conference as Oklahoma State University. And we prefer to play the University of Texas every year in Dallas, period. Those are our 2 preferences. So, regrettably, the landscape that we're looking at right now, these big changes that we talked about, don't allow for all 4 of those to occur. That's our conclusion and our observation and our projection. And a move today, as I said, isn't simply for financial reasons. To say that is to miss the point. To say that is to not understand why we care about athletics so deeply and why this recommendation to us is so imperative to navigate the absolutely changed waters that are in front of us. This is a move for stability and preservation and propagation. Again, an existential time, not an opportunistic one. All right, timing. The timing, as you all in the media know, is not of our choosing. This story broke last Wednesday. And as it broke, the very clear message from our friends in the Big 12 was, whatever you're going to do, please do it quickly. And we want to honor that. And you saw what took place a few days thereafter with the notice that we provided. Regardless of us not wanting that timing for last week, this needed to happen soon anyway. And it needed to happen soon because we try and always carry ourselves not just as fiduciaries of our loved institution, but also with character. We know, and the press has picked up on this, that the discussions and negotiations and the movements towards a new media rights agreement in 2025 are at their beginning stages. And to us, the right thing to do is to get out ahead of that. Because again, remember, we fully intend to be in the Big 12 through the fulfillment of that agreement. But it would be disingenuous not to be in a position where we provided advance notice to allow individuals to work on that. And let's also talk about the timing. Would we have preferred to have a lot of conversations in advance? Well, we would have. But that ignores the reality of how conferences work. It ignores the reality that we all know, which is windows open and opportunities can evaporate in a moment. So we have to be mindful of that. The next question is, why not Oklahoma State? Right? Why did you do this and not bring in Oklahoma State University? This is a question we've thought about a lot, dating back to 2012. That was part of our thought process and our conversation. We've analyzed this landscape deeply. Lots of conversations about how we do this. We looked at solutions for us to move together. But that simply is not what the market we're pursuing allows. That was true then, and it's even more true today in this changed landscape. We believe this move is not just best for OU. We believe this move is best for our state. I'm someone who's a lifelong resident of Oklahoma, and I love this institution with all of my heart. I'm also an Oklahoman, and I care deeply about our state. In our assessment, the opportunity for Oklahoma was with one university only. And if we didn't seize it, the answer would be none. And we also know this, right? We know OSU will continue to grow and flourish. They have exceptional leadership. They are an excellent program, and they will do well. We're in a unique position given the size of our program and the scale of the program. This move is good and necessary, not just for the institution, but as we think and look at our state. Right? Think about the benefits to Norman and the state. Not just Norman, but the entire state. Think about the exposure for OU and for our state. In the Big 12 right now, there is membership from 4 states. When this comes to pass in the SEC, there is membership and therefore games and all the exposure in 12 states. We moved from 4 to 12 states in terms of that exposure. And this has a real impact on the growth of our university, on the academics, on the research functions that take place. We'll have the inflow of SEC fans that know how to travel. We have a new and unique and exciting opportunity for our fans that otherwise wouldn't be available. And it, without a doubt, is critically important in our ability to recruit student athletes of the highest caliber and recruit students more broadly and faculty. And it also drives our ability to act as an engine for the state to help bring new economic opportunity to our state. We will be showcasing the excellence that is not just OU, but is the state of Oklahoma. There are manifest benefits to this that go well past OU. And importantly, none of this will impact our commitment to continuing to work with Oklahoma State to do what is best for the state of Oklahoma. We have a long record of service and partnership, and that will absolutely continue. I also want to say this, and I've communicated this to Oklahoma State, and that is we want the Bedlam rivalry to continue well past the expiration of this media rights agreement. Make no mistake, we want the Bedlam rivalry to continue, and make no mistake, even with this change, we want to play Oklahoma State in every sport and every year. So, why do we partner with Texas? Some of this is manifest, but the reality is it was done jointly because many schools are vying for a limited number of positions in the SEC. Each of us are absolute powerhouses. but there are other powerhouses out there. There is a special amount of power that makes us unique and special, not just by being individual powerhouses, but our rivalry in bringing that to the SEC. That is something special. That is something that is distinguishing, that neither of our institutions can do alone, but together brings unique value and opportunity. We're the only two schools in the Big 12 that have the massive stadiums, that fill those stadiums. And we saw the impact of COVID, right? The ability to continue to fill those stands on that basis is important to the environment and to the opportunity to drive our universities forward, not just in athletics, but well beyond, to accomplish those two musts that I spoke of earlier. All right, we're getting towards closing. This recommendation, we believe, is absolutely necessary for us to continue our legacy in our present athletic excellence and national championship caliber teams, and to ensure OU athletics remains self-sustaining. Two musts. Again, we have to be exceptional and maintain that. And for as long as is possible, we've got to be in a structure where the students, through tuition and fees, and the state are not subsidizing athletics. This will allow us to continue to attract the top student athletes across the country well into the future, provide a world-class fan experience, secure media exposure and opportunities for our events, for our student athletes, for our state, and to create better exposure for all of our athletic programs, to let us tell the OU story and the Oklahoma story across the country. We are immensely proud to be a part of the Big 12. Immensely proud. But these forces that require our institutions that are out there right now, these changes, will not allow us to do that beyond 2025. Right? The exciting victories and the passionate rivalries that have taken place over the past 25 years in the Big 12 and over the next years will always be a part of our heritage and our tradition. And we look forward with excitement to the next several years of those continued rivalries and matchups. And although we value it completely as we look towards our future in this changed world, we believe now is the time to not just honor those past 25 years, but to look forward for the next 25 years and the years beyond that. We believe that joining the SEC will sustain our national caliber and traditions. It will strengthen our university as a whole in our state and help us fulfill our strategic plan of academic excellence. And we believe that it will serve the wider interests of the state. I want to conclude my comments before giving it to Joe by expressing our gratitude, our deep gratitude to Commissioner Sankey and to the presidents and chancellors of all 14 SEC member institutions that voted unanimously to make the offer to us beginning in 2025. We are immensely grateful for that. And now I'll turn it over to Joe Castiglione.
Well, thank you, President Harris. As we summarize many of the points that President Harris just articulated, I want to first and foremost thank this board. Chairman Cawley, to each and every member of this board, and to you, President Harris. The leadership that we have on this campus is vibrant, and it always seeks to be innovative. We're dedicated to rock-solid principles and standing in a position to represent the people under our care. I also want to take a moment to recognize both our former and current student athletes, our coaches, our staff, and our fans. All of you have contributed to a culture of excellence, and I know you're committed to continuing to pursuit of the excellence in our future. As President Harris also mentioned, I want to extend our thank you, our appreciation to colleagues at the University of Texas, especially my counterpart, Chris Del Conte, Our two institutions enjoy a very unique relationship. Since we first played a football game in 1912 in the city of Dallas. Now, while we remain arch rivals, fierce rivals in the field of any competition, we know that we share some characteristics and goals that alignment serves us both very, very well. I would also like to underscore something that President Harris said earlier. Last week's timing was not of our choosing. We would have preferred to have an opportunity to provide calls or contacts to many of our colleagues throughout this conference, throughout the state, and elsewhere. I've been an athletic director for nearly 30 years. Most of that has been in the Big 12 Conference. There are relationships that are very meaningful to me. Our peers matter a great deal to not only me, but our institution. Even though our path has changed, those relationships are important. I want everyone to know that we look forward to being a contributing member of the Big 12 through the remaining time in our conference. I've always fully embraced the responsibilities and obligations that go along with my leadership and have tried to execute those duties in the best interests of all I represent. Let me make this clear again. This was not a decision any of us made lightly. But we're charged with making choices that are in the best interests of our institution, our programs, and oftentimes those are very, very complicated. And I take that responsibility very seriously. We've always been proud to be members of the Big 12. We will, in particular, always value the special connection to Oklahoma State University. And as President Harris said, we're committed to continuing Bedlam. We expect our rivalry to be as intense as ever, and just like we see in other states, the rivalries like Georgia, Georgia Tech, Clemson, South Carolina, Iowa, Iowa State, Florida, Florida State, can endure. One of the greatest obligations of any leader is to keep a watchful eye on what the future holds and how to be best positioned for it. We would have been remiss if we weren't always looking at opportunities to control our own destiny. So, we're here today as a result of that kind of planning and thoughtfulness. There are new dynamics, including those that President Harris outlined earlier. And those dynamics have forced us to re-examine the way we do everything, how we prepare, how we could prepare to provide more for our students, student athletes, athletically and academically. Let's be clear, we've always had to deal with periods of change and the unique challenges that come along with those changes. But we are in an unprecedented era of dramatic change and historic transformation. And it's happening at a pace that none of us have ever experienced. We needed to address these remarkable dynamics. So, after thorough consideration and study, it became obvious that standing pat would mean falling behind. It would mean putting our program in a precarious position, both competitively and financially. It would leave us to play catch-up with our competition and in our effort to offer an elite platform for the success of our student athletes and our coaches. The decision today will allow us to continue recruiting the most talented student athletes from everywhere and provide them with a world-class university experience. It will also allow us to ensure stability and sustainability as we seek our competitive and aspirational goals, and position our programs to take advantage of partnerships and relationships. It also allows us to secure media platforms for our events, for our student athletes, and our university. And of course, it'll allow us to showcase the OU story across the country and beyond. So, as we eventually move to the SEC, I know SEC fans will enjoy discovering Norman. They'll discover our athletic traditions that have continued to evolve in both men's and women's sports. I know that our incredible fan base is going to make the SEC even stronger. OU has a list of endless accomplishments, and our past rivals any in college athletics. Today, we secure a new course for stability and our continued pursuit of excellence. And with that, President Harris, I join you in our next step.
Thank you, Joe. And with that, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'd like to show our appreciation for Joe H. and Joe C. in this hard work. Seriously, this has really been challenging, difficult, and on behalf of the Board of Regents, we sincerely appreciate your diligence, your hard work, and your representation of the university. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go further, I'd like just to recognize that Regent Frank Keating is not able to be with us today. He scheduled a family vacation long before this came up, and he put family first, and we support that. You do need to know that he has been fully engaged in the development of this matter and has been fully briefed, fully informed, and is very supportive. So, Frank, we hope you're having a great time, and we missed you. So with that, I would ask if there is any motion that anyone would like to put forth in response to the invitation to join the SEC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the University of Oklahoma Board of Regents, number one, find that this transition benefits our institution's overall mission to serve our students, and that it would be advantageous to the state of Oklahoma. Number two, I move that the Board of Regents accept the invitation from the Southeastern Conference for the University of Oklahoma to begin membership in that athletics conference as of July 2025. And three, I move that the University of Oklahoma Board of Regents authorize the President of the University of Oklahoma, in consultation with the Vice President for Intercollegiate Athletics and the General Counsel, to take any action that is appropriate and necessary to effectuate that membership as may be in the best interest of the university.
Thank you, Regent Shirley. Is there a second of that motion?
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? Regent Stevenson?
Thank you, Regent Cawley. I did want to make just a few remarks, and The spirit of those remarks are really around two areas. One, to say thank you as you did to the leadership, and two, just to talk about, to help further put this in context of the decision that we're trying to make today in the spirit of the broader OU community. President Harris has been in his role both as interim and permanent around 2 years now. And one of the challenges that we gave to him day one was to be bold, to be decisive, and to look out for the long-term interests of the University of Oklahoma. And this is just one more step in that process that we are so appreciative for you and your entire leadership team. I would like to highlight just a couple of those areas of beyond athletics that we're especially proud of. And one, as everyone is aware, during the COVID-19 pandemic, this once-in-a-generation event leading across 3 campuses, Joe and his leadership team did not miss a single day of instruction or nor any mass layoffs, and we were able to have the athletics have a full year last year. More importantly is the impact that the health sciences had in the broader state of Oklahoma, in that we appointed a chief COVID officer for the state. We delivered over 60,000 vaccinations, and the statewide water analysis, just continuing to provide great leadership in incredible times. And by the way, most of your leadership has been during the pandemic, so I don't know what you're going to do when this is over. The second piece that really sets the foundation for all of this is the strategic plan. As best we can tell, this is the first strategic plan that's been put in place in over 40 years. 40 years without a strategic plan. And the kinds of decisions that team is making now with Joe Castiglione and Joe Harris is because there's a vision and there's a plan, and they're anticipating what's next and putting us in the right position and the best position to do that. So kudos to you for that. Another big decision in leadership from Joe and team is the OU Health merger, which will pay dividends for a long, long time, both at the University of Oklahoma but across the state. Bringing together under one unified organization 21 different departments, unifying 4 separate governances and leadership structures to create one single board and one management team with an ability to make decisions in the moment is just, we will feel the benefits of that for a really long time, and I couldn't be more proud of that. We all know that one of the things that we want to do in Oklahoma is provide affordable education for as many students as want to come here as we possibly can. And Joe, under your leadership, and also started with President Gallagher, of holding tuition flat for 2 years and then a modest increase this year. Not a lot of universities across the country, not many can say that, but we've done that and done that well, and we still, and just represents a great value to any student that chooses to come here, and just huge kudos to you. And in doing that, we have the projected largest class ever coming in for this year, highest ever academic performance, highest minority representation, and the highest generation of first-year students at OU. That's during a pandemic. That's during all the upheaval that's gone on. And that if you don't think that this leadership team and this board is focused on the students across the university, across the state of Oklahoma, you don't understand what we're spending our days and our time doing. And then anticipating the future and building out OU online. Just really next level leadership, whether it's a Fortune 500 company or any major university. This leadership team has its head on straight, is focused on the most important things, and is leading at an incredibly high level. But it didn't just start with President Harris. I want to also thank the work of President Gallagher in helping lay this foundation that we're working on. Also, the previous Board of Regents and the great work that they've done. And our previous chairman, Chairman Pearson, got us off to a great start, which Chairman Cawley has continued to lead us and put us in the right direction. And then just the new addition of Regents, and Regent Holloway and Regent Nagle coming on board, adding new skills to this team. It's just getting better and better and better all the time. And so when you ask me what I'm excited about what's next. This is a big step, but it's not the end. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to challenge and continue to push and make sure that the University of Oklahoma and the state of Oklahoma, that we reach the highest levels that we possibly can.
Could I ask that Regent Stevenson continue these remarks?
Is there anything else you have to say, Regent Stevenson?
Mr. Chair, if I could, truly grateful for that. This board is absolutely stunning and remarkable, and that's where it starts. And there are so many people that work so hard, and a good example was the pandemic. I mean, that is thousands of people working, 15-hour days to make it possible. So I receive those with gratitude, but we all know where that truly belongs. So thank you.
So lest we forget why we're here, there is a motion and a second before us. Is there any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the Southeastern Conference. Is there any other business to come before the meeting? Actually, it's welcome and at the end of June 30, 2025. Correct. All right. No other business will be adjourned. Thank you very much.